Welcome back to the Great Detour. I just wrapped up a conversation with a lovely guest whose work lives right at the intersection of two things I love to talk about: psychology and spirituality. Today I'm talking with Casey Stevens, a spiritual psychotherapist who is truly the real deal. She's sharp, insightful, and has such a calming presence. And you can feel that she's someone who has genuinely done the inner work and now helps others do the same. I also felt an immediate connection to Casey because her detour reminded me so much of my own. Hers began when the life she built since 17, sound familiar, started to unravel. And then the end of her marriage became the catalyst for a deep inner awakening, one that brought her back to herself and into the intuitive, soul-centered work that she does today. At its core, this episode is about what happens when your old life falls away and you're called to get closer to yourself. We explore how to move through the liminal space, strengthen your intuition, and understand the patterns and fears that shape your choices. More than anything, it's about rebuilding your life in a way that feels aligned and true to who you really are. So if you're navigating a season of change, whether it's divorce, a career transition, or a spiritual awakening, this conversation will help you feel grounded, supported, and more trusting of your own detour. And as always, if you're enjoying the show, it would mean so much to me if you hit subscribe, left a rating or review, or shared the Great Detour with somebody else who would love these conversations too. And with that, here's my conversation with Casey. Welcome to the Great Detour. I'm Jess, your host. In this podcast, we talk about life's unplanned paths, those experiences that challenge and transform us in ways we never expected. Through honest conversations, my guests and I share inspiring stories and practical advice to help you navigate your own journey. I hope these stories inspire you to trust your path, embrace change with resilience, and step into your most authentic, empowered self. Casey Stevens, welcome to the Great Detour.
Thanks, Jess, for having me. It's a privilege to be here with you.
I'm so excited for this conversation. Before we get in, though, I feel like it has to be acknowledged. Has anybody ever told you look like Brittany Snow?
No.
Really? Oh my gosh, that is the first thing I thought when I saw you.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, she's lovely. So
I'm getting major pitch perfect vibes. But yeah, I am so excited for this episode because I geek out on all things psychology and spirituality, and you are a spiritual psychotherapist, so an ideal guest for me. So I cannot wait to dig into all of the things.
yes.
And while I was doing some of my prep work for this episode, I felt a real connection to you, not just because of the topics that you discuss, but also we have very similar spiritual awakening stories. So my listeners know this, I'll give you the cliff notes, but I was married to my high school sweetheart. We were together for 17 years. And then when I was 35, we got divorced. Dark night of the soul, the whole thing.
Yep.
And that was my catalyst for my spiritual awakening and my healing journey. And I know you have a similar path. So I would love to start off there by having you tell us a little bit about your great detour that led you to your spiritual awakening.
Well, it was very, very similar. I met my husband, I guess I was 17, and, really,
Same, 17.
yeah, life really was idyllic in many ways for me. I didn't look back and look at my childhood or have like lots of traumas or dramas around any of that. And really, I had a beautiful relationship with him. He really just we had a great match. And it's so funny once we become aware of our unconscious and how we kind of follow patterns. But I don't think I ever intended to get married so young or meet, the person that I would marry at that age. And I don't know that I necessarily recommend it, except of course it's turned out to be an absolutely beautiful thing for me. But it really was good until, challenges arose. And that's really when for us in particular, he had some real mental health struggles that he went through, which of course opened me up to this world. And of course I got into it thinking, well, we need to fix him. That's what we're doing, is we're going to figure out what's going on there and resolve those problems. And so, quickly enough, I realized that, really we can't force anyone to do their work. We can't do any of those things. So really again, I just have nothing but love and fond memories and a wonderful life that I always call just like my former life, until all of these challenges arose. And that's when I had to look really inward. What I realized was my orientation to the world at that time, which I really hadn't had a kind of invitation to know about myself. But really what I realized is that when there's a problem, how I organize myself around the problem is I'm really solution focused. I want to dig in. I'm very growth minded. I want to seek to understand, and I want to, make it better, right? That really is kind of my organization, which I hadn't known because I hadn't been challenged to not understand that yet. So what I also noticed at that time, and maybe it was again because of choice, but maybe not so much choice on his part at that time, was that he was not organized in that same way. He was often resistant to the help. He was often resistant to the change. We, just became divergent in our paths in that time, that really became very clear that that's particularly important orientation to share with a partner, right? It's like, are we going to grow together? Are we going to solve problems together when there is a problem? Or are we going to take different courses in that? And so the awareness and the awakening of just kind of my organization and my orientation to life and the world and challenges became crystal clear at that time. And so, of course, over some challenges of, me trying to force it, me doing all the wrong ways, me trying to overfunction, me trying to, beg and plead and everything that I could do, eventually I had to surrender and really recognize, you can't change anyone. You can't force anyone. Really, all you can do is your own kind of inner work and your own inner, discovery. And if there are obstacles that are preventing me from doing that, well, that's my work to do. And I have to just really surrender the outcome. And that's really hard, right? When you have shared a life and built a world and an identity around somebody, and my values were so also just embedded in, I never even considered that my relationship would work. I didn't see that from my own parents. They were a great model of relationship. I just thought, we'll figure, no matter what happens in life and marriage, like we will figure it out. And I came to learn that that was a pretty naive perspective for me to carry, especially when we were so divergent in this obstacle that we were facing. And so try as I might, eventually I had to really accept that maybe this isn't going to work. Maybe the outcome and me gripping and clinging and being overly attached to staying together, making it work, making him somebody that I needed him to be so that I felt peaceful or I was happy. I had to surrender all of that, which felt close to impossible, right? I gripped as long as I possibly could before I finally let that go. And then what happened was the work that started with therapy, and we had, a therapist that was our therapist. Eventually, he exited that and I continued, and I found so much relief and, sacred space, right, in that with this person who really then held me while I was figuring out what decisions to make about that, but also what's next. So anyway, what I did then is I continued the work with our therapist, who became my therapist, who really kind of in many ways became a mentor for a brief time there. She helped me kind of figure it, because, as you know, and I never really developed my own identity because I met my husband so young. And so I really entered into adulthood as a unit and unified, probably overly enmeshed with this person. And so I had all of those kind of enmeshment tendencies, probably a little codependency, not probably a little, definitely a lot of codependency, I'll say. And so really I didn't even know how to be in the world. Every aspect of my life was being, just demolished, and I had to rebuild because those constructs of my career, finances, relationships, my marriage, who am I, all of that, I had kind of outsourced to, frankly, his life and his preferences and his way of being. And I didn't really know that I had done that, until I realized, oh wow, like making this decision about my marriage really is making a decision about my life in a very profound way. And so I did. Eventually I decided, there's not much of a marriage left here if one person is trying really hard and one person is not participating. What do I have? And I really made that decision kind of, again, gripping without wanting to I tried to make every other decision before that decision, right? And then I just had to realize that it was kind of killing me, honestly. It was probably physically killing me. I, had lost an incredible amount of weight. I was stressed all the time. Any sense of a relationship was gone because I had really gone into a lot of overfunctioning around his mental health issues. And I just simply couldn't change it. I had to surrender it. So I made that decision. I continued with my therapy. And my therapist is no coincidence. I think I just found the perfect person for me. She was, grounded in all of these, in the psychology, but she also is deeply spiritual herself. And so it helped because I just noticed that in this time of deep pain for myself, she was the place that felt really safe. She was the place that I could really feel seen and known and explore these parts of myself that I had long neglected or ignored. And so that is what happened. I dove into my own inner work first. I noticed how deeply intuitive I've always been my whole life. And I really, again, had acquiesced that to, somebody else's needs or preferences. And so I neglected it. And those parts of me had not just been nourished or supported. And so then what I did is I eventually decided, after who knows what amount of time, a year, whatever, just some deep reflection, that again, I have to really decide what to do with my life. So I decided eventually, I walked into her office and I tell this story often, but I just said, I think I want to do what you do. And of course, her being intuitive and magical and wonderful in the way that she was, she just said, I've just been waiting for you to say that. So
Wow.
that was a beautiful journey. She ended up writing one of my recommendations for me to go back to school and, study to do the clinical work. And she's like, I would never do this for most people, but we just had, this beautiful bond, and she really saw me and she really helped me because I had also, started my awakening. I think going through a loss of that caliber, which is sometimes we don't think of divorce as loss, but it's like tremendous. It's so many things, right? It's so many. I was just meeting with an old friend who was kind of my best friend in that world, who, I've kind of loosely stayed connected to, but we were actually just out to dinner on Friday. And I was just saying what a loss she was, right? I mean, she really went from being the center of my world in terms of friendship to not being there because it was just too hard to reconcile all of it. And so there's loss of relationships, there's loss of family, there's loss of identity, there's loss of that relationship, there's loss of so many things that we have to wrestle with, right? It's not a small thing to do, just to walk away from a marriage. And I didn't take it lightly, but I knew that my survival was dependent on doing that. And so moving forward, here I am. I decided I want to go back to school, but I also realized I didn't have the same kind of magic or mysticism that my therapist did, but I knew I wanted to discover my own. And what I also found was not just the therapy and understanding my behaviors or my husband at that time. That wasn't what was so useful. It was really tapping into my own intuition and my own awakening that was happening kind of spiritually. And what I was noticing is so much of the relief that I found was through kind of engaging and encountering with this kind of mystical world, the unseen, all of that really, continued to unfold over the years as we awaken and just go deeper into it. It's like I couldn't escape it then. Everything was that. And it was a very private, kind of insular, isolated experience for me, as it often is, right? I mean, I really kind of went inward, was spending all my time, just kind of keeping it to myself and allowing it to develop and unfold in terms of my own, just awakening intuition, how that comes through for me. I think we all have our own unique medicine and magic. And so I was just rediscovering what that was for me at the time. And how do I listen to that? And how do I have a relationship with kind of this spiritual world, which is ultimately, I think, a relationship with ourselves. And so that was just this beautiful, profound time. And then, many more things happened. Of course, I was going through my divorce. I was going back to school. During that time, shortly after all of that, my former husband ended up passing away, which also just catapulted my awakening and connection with spirit and, all of those things. There's lots of beauty and magic and all of that, because that was a really deeply healing time for me as well. Again, I had already started my awakening, but then to have him in spirit and, be receptive to all of those messages and encounters in a way that actually ended up being very poetic and beautiful and sacred for me during that time. And it also took my abilities like off the charts because he was around me. It was very omnipresent, I think, because of the nature of what our relationship was really for that last little period of time. That wasn't great, was so contrary to what it had always been, which was actually quite beautiful. And so it was really lovely for me because really in our awakened life, I never really had closure around any of it. It was a lot that just because he couldn't engage and because of our ending, it wasn't possible. And so not that, I was glad, of course, that, he was in this space, but it ended up being quite beautiful experience for me and this connection. There was lots of reconciliation and healing that occurred for us. And so that all happened. And that also kind of blew my chips out of the water because I wasn't, and I would never just, tell people I'm a medium or any of these things, but there's no questioning when you're experiencing encounters with somebody, that's just on the other side of the veil, that how real it is. And, that's again, my own personal relationship with that. But it really helped in terms of my awakening, right? Just to, speak to that a little bit. It really helped me to not only really catapult my healing during that time, but also catapult my gifts. And so, but I kept a lot of it to myself. I didn't share a lot of those. It's now, I'm much more comfortable that it's, a decade later that I can, more than a decade later, right, that I can speak about it and be comfortable. But it was so deeply personal, so deeply intimate, so deeply emotional for me for so long that, and also, you just like, how do you talk about that and have people really understand? And, it's not about being understood at all, but just be comfortable with, what anyone thinks about this is not my problem. I know how real this relationship is. And, I know what is I'm experiencing, and that's all that matters. And so I'm really at peace with that because, so that's all happened. And then I went to school and I did all the things. And I also just kind of continued to pursue during that time. Sometimes I look back and I'm like, how on earth did I have the energy for this? I don't know how I survived it. I don't know how I did any of it. But again, there was this strong kind of inner strength and this will and this drive just to move forward. And I was so passionate. I wanted to help people in this way. I knew how much this combination of somebody being spiritual and a therapist helped me. And I thought, I want to do that in my own way, but bring my own magic. And so that's what I did. And I was really clear how I wanted to work and who I wanted to work with. And then I think I just became so much more unapologetic about that along the way because, we just get more confident, right? And we get better at it and we get all of these things that unfold. And so that's what happened. And now here I am. I've been in practice for all of these years and I, work in a very unique way with people, but I offer my own, just kind of magic and therapy to people in a way that hopefully makes a difference. So
did you see how much I was smiling? Oh my God. I had so many moments of resonance throughout everything you were saying, from your divorce story to your awakening to your gifts coming back online. It's just, I get it. Same girl, same. I totally understand it. And what is that Rumi quote? The wound is where the light gets in. I really think it's true. When you have something that brings you to your knees like that, it really cracks you wide open, but it allows the light to get in and it gives you the opportunity to go inward and to find yourself. I loved what you were saying about your therapist too. I've had a similar relationship with my therapist. I found her right when I was debating, do I stay, do I go? And she helped me through that decision. I've been with her ever since. And I consider her a soul helper, like somebody who's here on this earth to help me through my journey and with my soul's growth and evolution. And it's just a beautiful thing when you have those helpers in your life.
And I think we're meant to find those. I call them almost like,
oh, of course.
I love soul helper, but I call them earth angels, right? It's like, I think people come into your life that really, help facilitate that path forward. And she was one for me, and for a period of time, right? That she was really wonderful, and just, I couldn't be more grateful. And then sometimes that evolves, and there's somebody else who guides you. And I kind of always hold a candle to her in gratitude. It's a big deal.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you were talking about divorce in terms of loss, and I agree with you. It is a huge loss. You have so much to grieve. It affects so many different areas, not just your relationship, but your friendship, community, everything. But I also think divorce can be such a huge act of self-reclamation. So I'm curious for you, what was the first part of yourself that you reclaimed?
Honestly, I would say the very first, and, you can see the genesis of the way I described that. Really what came first for me was just the presence with myself. So before I decide what I wanted to do or who I wanted to be or any of those things, I really had to get present with myself and reattune to who I was, what my values were, what my beliefs were, which of those, values I perhaps had inherited or absorbed and didn't necessarily really align or resonate. So I just really had to come back to myself in a way that I wasn't concerned with anybody else's needs or anybody else's preferences or anybody else's values. It was really just represencing to myself, remembering who I was, and even parts that I had so, again, long neglected or maybe even never known or discovered about myself. That I think just the way that programming happens in life, in the world, in society, in our family systems, all subconsciously, all unintentionally, I had to reevaluate all of that. So the first step for me was really this, and indeed, I agree with you. Reclamation is a great word, really, because I think that has to start with yourself. And sometimes people will think, especially if they've been pleasers or, enmeshed in some way, at least that was kind of my tendency. It can be labeled as selfish. But for me, it was really going into this deeply self-honoring process where I was really, I can't worry about anything or anyone else now. I really, if I don't know and tend to myself and get to know myself and become the version of me that I was always meant to be, then I will not be free, to do anything, to build anything on top of that. And that was the thing, is the foundation that I built on in the past was so shaky that it was so unstable. It was so based on somebody else rather than on myself. And not everything. I mean, I don't mean to say that I was a total, like there was lots of that woven in there, but it just was so murky. It wasn't clear. It wasn't differentiated. It wasn't conscious. And so really I had to reevaluate that. And presence was the first thing for me. What would you say it was for you?
I think for me, God, there were so many things. I have such a similar story to you. And it was just like this codependency and this enmeshment and this just outward focus. But yeah, I think it was just focusing inward and choosing myself.
Mm-hmm.
And similar to what you said, I loved that reframe. You were saying it's not selfish, it's self-honoring. It really is. I was so afraid of disappointing people, or I was such a chronic people pleaser, of people being mad at me because I was doing more things for myself or maybe setting more boundaries I hadn't set before. But it really was. It was just choosing myself and just giving myself the opportunity to even find out who the heck I was. Because I remember that was my first question when he wasn't here anymore. It's like, who am I? And then from there, it was my voice. And then from there, it was my confidence. And like all of those things came afterwards. But yeah, the first part was really just like, yeah, getting to know myself more.
Yeah. And it takes a long time. I mean, it's not just like snip.
It's a process. Yeah.
It is a devotional path that you really have to choose to embark on that. And then it's a commitment to never lose that or lose sight of that again. Right. And so that is the way that, and I can't not do it that way anymore. Right. It's just become so baked into really how it was always meant to be. But, I took a detour there. So yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So in my journey, and it's not only one time that this has happened, I'm in one now, but I've had these liminal chapters, these in-between chapters where I've left my old life. I haven't yet stepped foot into the next chapter, and I'm in this weird in-between. Like right now, same thing. I quit my career, my job that I was in for a decade, didn't feel aligned. I really feel like it was the right thing. To this day, I'm like, that was the right move, but I haven't stepped foot into the next thing, and it's just like this in-between. So I'm curious if you had any of those liminal chapters and how you navigated them.
I mean, so many. Yeah, so many.
Okay, good. That makes me feel better.
Oh my
Not
gosh.
just me.
It really, like, we almost need to shed all of that old skin in order to be able to step more wholly right into the next thing. And I think there's so often, I call it, even in relationships, people, I call it ship jumping. It's like, are we ship jumping from one identity to the next, from one relationship, meaning I'm just jumping from here to there? And I actually think it's, number one, probably the wiser people who take time to live in the liminal space.
It's uncomfortable.
It's deeply uncomfortable because it's deep. It's inherently insecure. It's inherently uncertain. It's inherently unknown, which is one of the greatest fears that people have. And so how do I become what I meant to be? Well, I think the best way is to like completely step into the liminal space, shed your skin of everything that is not you, like get off all the residue. And then only then can you really know which direction you're going with more clarity and more certainty, more conviction, more discernment, right? I think it's easier to do that, but it's terrifying, right? Because we're not able to grasp to the last thing or the next thing, right? We are just floating. We're free floating. And the surrender and the faith and the acceptance and all of that, right, that's necessary in order to really embark on what's next, I think is dependent on what happens in this space, right, that is very alchemical, ultimately, if you allow yourself to be in that. I mean, it's like being in the chrysalis. I'm really going to dissolve into this gooey nothing until I can, reimagine where I'm headed next. And if that next form is going to be, is if it's going to feel righteous to me and aligned and congruent with who I am at this time. So good for you. And I mean, it's beautiful to be in, but it's deeply uncomfortable.
It is incredibly uncomfortable, but like you were saying, it's this balance of discomfort, but also like it's highly liberating at the same time. In the beginning, it's always like, oh my gosh, what did I do? I'm not safe. I'm not safe. But once you lean into it, there is this beautiful surrender and yeah, this liberation. And this year, for me in particular, has been one of the hardest but most expansive years internally. And on the outside, it probably doesn't look, I mean, yes, I quit my job, so that has changed, but it doesn't look like I'm winning at life or, achieving my goals from an outward perspective. But internally, there have been so many shifts. Belief systems have shifted, mindsets have shifted. So that's been powerful for me. And something that's come through in all of these liminal chapters that I've been in is how loud my intuition gets.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something I wanted to talk to you about too, because you brought that up earlier. And it's something I talk about all the time on this show is the role of intuition. And, how do you work with your intuition on a regular basis? And have there been any times where it's told you to do something that just doesn't make sense, but you went with it and you were right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, more than I can tell you. Yeah. It really is a relationship, right, with yourself that you develop that's available, I think, to everyone. But so we have to dismantle all of the programs, all of the tendencies that would prevent us from really knowing ourselves and being able to listen to that deeply. We have to dissolve all of that so that we can really learn to listen, because it interferes. It creates static and interference that doesn't allow us to see ourselves or the world or even receive these messages clearly. And I think just, the world, society, we are so conditioned to, be run on fear that that really is the opposite of intuition, right? We can't really hear that voice, that language, that part of ourselves clearly if we are running on fear, right? And so how do we quiet that? How do we develop a relationship? And I think it's a devotional path, again, that we have to commit to consistently engaging with that. It can't just be sometimes. It can't just be when you need it. It has to be the voice really that runs through you most deeply. And so how do you get in touch with that? And I always think there's two questions to ask, right? What do I need to remove and what do I need to make available? So if you're developing a relationship with your intuition, it's like, okay, well, what fear beliefs do I need to remove? What tendencies? What do I need to stop doing? And then also, what might I need to add? Maybe that's more stillness. Maybe that's more presence. Maybe that's the stress from the job that isn't allowing me to access my inner compass. And so how do I do that so that I can now really listen to this, develop such a keen relationship with my intuition that it will never fail me? Because the truth is sometimes your intuition gives you deeply inconvenient guidance, right? It's
to quit my job. That was based off of my intuition. It was very inconvenient.
Very inconvenient and very scary. And it will seem like, oh no, that's not right. It's like, oh no, if it's a quiet whisper, if it's still, if it doesn't have an agenda, if it's not fearful, if it doesn't have all of these things, but it's just consistent. It's like, okay, well, I got that message today and I'm going to check in an hour and see what I feel, or I'll check in tomorrow and just it will be consistent. It doesn't waver. And frankly, it doesn't have an agenda whatsoever. The agenda is to put you into your truth, is to put you into your center. And so sometimes that means that you're going to have to do, things that you never would conceive of doing, make really hard decisions, it's a harder course, frankly, many times to listen to your intuition, especially about big, life path decisions, right? I mean, those are, particularly a big deal, right, to embark on. So yeah, I mean, I can't name how many, but for instance, my decision finally, right, to leave my marriage, to choose this as a career path, to work in this way, to seek out this type of it. And I listen to it. I mean, it's just it's never separate from me now. It is so embedded in who I am that it really is the driving force for me that helps me make all decisions. I usually do not make them from a rational place. I make them from a deeply intuitive place, whether that's relationships that I surround myself with. I can make pretty quick decisions in my life now. Not that they all have to be fast, but I can sort through it because I keep my barometer so clear and the relationship with my intuition so strong that I just have faith that when I do that, even if it's harder first, it will be better and will guide me to where I'm meant to be. And it's never wrong. It's just never wrong.
It's never wrong. And I love what you said about like it not being from fear. That's how I differentiate it. If it feels like urgent, if it feels like the energy is frenetic, I know that's not my intuition. Sometimes it doesn't make any sense, but it's always quiet. It's always calm. It's just like this repetitive knowing. And I just talked about this in one of my solo episodes, but I'm a touch the stove kind of girl. I got to see if it's hot. So I learned over the years by ignoring my intuition many times. And then afterwards, I'm like, oh my gosh, I knew I shouldn't have done that. Or I knew I should have done that. And that's kind of how I've learned by getting burned and ignoring it. So now I just know to trust it. And I think, yeah, like getting in tune with your intuition is kind of just cultivating a stronger sense of self-trust in the end, right?
Well, yeah. And it, like sometimes externalizing that or thinking about it's a part of you. And you can neglect
It
that
is.
part of you, or you can build a relationship like it was a real person that we're sitting in the room and like you were sitting across from me. And it's like, all right, I want to get to know you. I want to know everything about you. I want to dive in here. And so it's really taking the space and time to develop that relationship with this invisible part of you that actually is quite prominent, right? If you allow it to have space to sit in the room, to take up space. And, you know, I just don't see any downfall of doing that because the benefit that I get from having this deeply profound relationship with my intuition just really helps me, you know, have faith that no matter what, I'm going to be okay. Like, I don't know if it's going to take me on a ride. I don't know if it's going to be hard for a little while, but I'll be fine. You know, like I don't really have fears around anything that happens. I'm not anticipating life or gripping to anything too tightly. That if you look back at my former life, that's really what was happening is I wasn't really allowing space for all possibilities. I wasn't really allowing space for anything to happen. And so my life was limited. It wasn't infinite. It wasn't. And so now with this, again, it's an orientation that your intuition just amplifies. If you have this orientation to life that a problem's not a problem, it's how you organize yourself a problem. And then the guiding posts that I have or, you know, like I guess, wand that I'm carrying around is my intuition to guide me through that as a light. It's like, well, I don't know. I just feel like you can't go wrong. Mm-hmm.
You can't go wrong. Like you said before, it is never wrong. Do you feel that stillness is required in order to tap into your intuition? Because that is something on my journey that I keep getting forced into periods of stillness. And I'm like, I don't like this. But I will say that my intuition has like made leaps and bounds in those periods.
I would say, I think we all need periods of stillness, right? Like too much kind of chaos or activity or lack of presence is going to disrupt that relationship and our ability to perceive this. It's a language, right? It's a dialect that we learn to, you know, understand and interpret and relate to. I know I needed a lot of stillness initially because I wasn't able to hear. I needed to almost create this echo chamber where I could, you know, palpate this voice that was my intuition. I needed stillness to cultivate that, to really trust what I was getting and to discern what was happening and how do I differentiate this thing that I've neglected and has really atrophied in my life. And so I needed it, especially up front. Now I still need lots of moments of stillness. I mean, I need to recoup and, you know, regenerate myself. Often I couldn't do what I do or be who I am if I didn't, you know, have moments of that I really provided this nourishment. But I don't necessarily at this point need to go into stillness to access my intuition. And there was a period of time that I think I really needed that. At this point, it's a pretty, you know, omnipresent relationship that is coming through. And I think it's always coming through. But again, we don't learn to interpret it because our intuition is always there. Like you gave a great example when you said, hey, it was there. And I look back and I can reflect on these things where my intuition was telling me. I think that's true, but we just didn't slow down enough to interpret it and develop a strong relationship. And so at this point, I feel like, not that I certainly couldn't need moments of stillness to really access something, or if it was a big decision, I would probably spend more time and sit with it. But at this point, I feel like the omnipresence of that, the messaging that I get is available to me right now.
That's a beautiful thing. What would you say to somebody who's listening, who's like, wow, that sounds amazing. Like, I wish I could tap into my intuition, but I feel so disconnected from it. What would be like a first step you would recommend to them on how to tap into it more or get closer to themselves?
Go into stillness, create a space where you can really sit. I always think, our intuition comes through in lots of ways. I happen to be more kinesthetic than anything. And so I receive a lot of messages through my body. And I think that's where trauma is stored. I think that's where so much of all of this subconscious lives, right? And so it's not going to be something that we intellectualize. It's going to be something that I get in. I create a space that's safe, that's a container for me to completely be present with myself. And then I go even more inward, right? Then I go even inside the body. Then I drop out of my head. Then I really presence myself like deeper into my center. And when I do that, I have no agenda about what's going to happen. It's not just like, okay, intuition, tell me, right? It's like, I can't force it, but I just track the energy. And if I do that, then I can listen, okay, well, what's interfering over here? What's this part saying? Or, if I'm having this thing come up, what is it that is really being called for here? How do I learn to listen from that space? And again, I have a tendency of being more kinesthetic than anything. But I think all those parts of us, all our sensory abilities come online when we really open the gateway to get in with our strongest access point. So for me, that would again just be find the stillness, find the presence, go inward, go even deeper than you thought, you were going to go, and just welcome whatever it is that comes. I don't have an agenda about it, but I want to listen so that I can, discern and interpret. And if I'm too fearful, or if I'm too urgent, or there's anything that's impulsive that's coming up, see, this is what happens too. So a huge part of my intuition is I'll yawn and I'll burp, and I'll like, when I'm on track with something, then this is what happens, which again sounds weird, but I'm just telling you, that's my own.
No, I've gone to psychics who do that. So
yes. So and it just tells me, number one, it's actually nervous system regulating, right? It's a release.
Yeah.
Of kind of this pent up energy, but it's also validation. If I'm talking to anyone or if I'm working with clients, I'll start doing the same thing, because if we're on the right track, not only is it kind of this somatic healing that's happening because it's regulating, the more closer we get to the truth is regulating to our body and to our nervous system. But so it's validation, but it's also like a mini little somatic healing, even if you're at a distance or even if any of those things are happening. So anyway, I always like to say that just so that, it's because it can come through in all kinds of ways. I could start hiccuping. It's very kinesthetic for me. It's like really in my body. So
mine is chills. Whenever something's being validated, I get chills. Yeah.
I love even the diversity of that, because what is it for you? How do you listen to it and then learn to trust that? And so I just am so unapologetic, but I like to remind people, like, if you see me yawning or if you see this, it's like, I'm really
it's not you.
I'm processing a lot right now and we're on the right track and it's a good sign. So don't take it personally. This is what it is. So everyone who works with me really knows that. And anyone who knows me really knows that that's what's happening for me. But I just can't help it. And it really happens. I love that it happens in my work. It's not just in my personal life, but it really happens when I'm working, holding space for people, because we're connected to energy. And so it all just kind of flows. But anyway, I always like to say that when someone sees me doing it for the first time, it's like, okay, that's what's going on here. So it's that, and it's learning to listen just like you did. It's like, for you, it's chills. For me, I can get chills too, but it's just this very, visceral, physical process that is happening. And I would just really ask, what is it? Some people hear things, some people see things. How do you learn to listen to how that messaging is coming through for you, and then trust it? If you're getting the messaging, trust what you're getting. So.
Yeah, I think it's an exercise in just paying attention.
Yeah.
Like, these signs have been here my whole life. I've just dismissed them, didn't notice them, didn't give them the airtime. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, I have had this inner guidance system, this inner compass the entire time. And now I'm just noticing it. But it's a beautiful homecoming and another reclamation. So yeah, anybody listening, you have this too. It's not something just the two of us here have. So I encourage you, take some time in stillness. Notice when things feel off. Give it a moment, and where is it in your body? And you'll slowly but surely start noticing how your intuition shows up for you. And if you allow it to guide you, like you can have a pretty amazing, expansive, authentic life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm curious for you in your practice with your clients, are there any like common blocks that you see a lot of people hitting up against that are keeping them from moving forward?
I would say beliefs, right, that are usually it's any way that we are over identifying with a part of us that's not serving us. And we're leaning into our compensatory strategies. We're not conscious of what those are. And ultimately, at the root of all of it, I think is typically a victim consciousness. It's like, where have I not healed the ways that I feel victimized around something that is leading me to behave or make decisions or see the world through a lens that is not clear or clean? And how do I, remove whatever that is for me, right? Because it's going to be so, personal to each one of us. But where is it that you are still, in opposition to yourself, probably subconsciously? And usually I think at the root of that is always some victim consciousness, some way that we were hurt or wronged or, anchored in. And then we've over identified with that again, subconsciously, typically. And again, that could be any part of life, but it's preventing us we are anchoring in those circumstances more by not evaluating what those are, or by over identifying with parts of us that are not us. They're just there to defend or protect us against something we've experienced in the past that's not even in the present, and it certainly doesn't need to be in the future. And so it's kind of this over identifying with that, which again, at the root of it, if we had to really sum it all up, I would say is a victim consciousness. And so, which is legitimate, right? Like we probably were hurt and wounded in those ways, and it's very real. But again, we've over identified with that. And so anyway, that I would say is and that could be anyone that I work with. I can tell you, just energetically, for whatever reason, the people who typically are drawn to me, who work with me, and not that I sought out to work with these people, but they have been things that, I've been good at. So they've been people going through awakenings, people who are gifted, people who are in massive transitions, people who are having relationship struggles, right? So, not satisfied or not fulfilled, people who are having a spiritual awakening. And so trying to understand that
What is going on?
what's going on.
It's so confusing.
And just, people that kind of want to approach. So, I mean, many of them, it might even look like mental health issues, right? Or a psychosis to a typical person who is prescribing, meds or diagnosing or, those types of prognosis or label. Not that that can't happen, but a lot of times it's people actually awakening to their gifts, and it's just happening too fast and they don't understand it, and the world around them doesn't understand it. And so they don't know how to be helped with that. So I have a lot of people. And then I also have a lot of people who are in Western medicine of some type: doctors, therapists, psychiatrists, nurses, people in medicine who are wanting, they're recognizing there's more, and they're wanting to learn how to incorporate, how to tap that, and how to actually be of greater service, because they've done it the conventional way, and they want guidance and support how to do it in a more unconventional way that would frankly be more helpful to everybody.
I love that.
I know. It's amazing. And again, it's not like I've advertised for any of these things, but, people find, one person starts and then they know somebody else, and however that happens. Right. And so then it just is expansive, and ultimately the right people find me. And then I work with a lot of business leaders and people who have been highly successful in life. Again, CEOs, business owners, entrepreneurs, people like that, who have been really, really successful in business, but they're finding that they're not satisfied in either their spiritual or relational self. And so they've kind of done it all, and they're realizing, oh, wait, what did I do all that for? There's something missing. How can you help me with that? So it's interesting, right? Because again, I didn't set out to, work with any of these, but these tend to be the people who come that are wanting to solve problems that would have anything to do with that. And again, I would really distill down, probably at the root of it is we're out of alignment with our value system. We're over identifying with things that are not really us, or we haven't identified with the things that are, and we haven't connected to our intuition or our spiritual self. There's a longing or a lacking in that. And there's still some resonance of a victim consciousness in my life that is preventing me from really having a much more expansive experience.
Yeah. There was something on your website I saw that I wanted to ask you about, but quantum healing. Say more.
So it's really kind of diving in. I mean, it's all of the ancient arts and really understanding, and not that I'm a quantum physicist at all, I'm not, but really when you start tapping into the energy of all of these things, what we recognize is that most of us are time traveling all the time. We're time traveling usually to points in time when that we've already experienced. We're dragging those past experiences into the present, and then we're projecting them out into the future. And so if you think about it on a really human scale, which, this physical matter, you really start to understand as well, the deeper you go into this work, that everything is energy. So I really come from that belief system that everything is energy. Thoughts, words, everything is a consciousness which holds an energetic frequency, which is entangled with all other things in the world at all times. And so if you really start to understand that that is quantum physics, right, distilled down in a very simplistic way, but it actually is quite simple. It's like, energy creates matter. And so our human selves, right, sometimes it can be hard to comprehend all of that. But, and then you kind of think about that in terms of the span of time. And you really recognize that I can collapse all time and space by understanding and tapping into an energetic frequency. And that can be a past version of myself. That can be a future version of myself. That can be a consciousness I want to embody. That can be a consciousness I want to remove. It can be healing a part of my body. There is so much really that is kind of tangled up in, if you palpate and kind of work with the energy and the consciousness that just makes up everything in the world, makes up every one of us, makes up so many aspects of us, because we're broken up in all of these different aspects as well. And so it really becomes very complex and multidimensional. And it's also very, very simple. If you kind of learn to tap and palpate that world, then what you can see is in your human life, in your relationships, in the present moment, what we can do is we can collapse all of these things to achieve our ideal self. And so a lot of it, when we think of it relationally or in psychology, is just how is it that some present version of me is over-identified and over-associated. I've associated in my mind this former version of myself, and I'm dragging that into my present and I'm projecting it into my future. And so when you do what you did, you get what you got. You will just recycle the same experiences over and over again. And then we don't really change. We remain stuck. We remain suffering. We are not living the best versions of ourselves. And so it's kind of understanding this in how I would use it in my terms and with clients, is we really have the ability to go in and going deeper. I mean, it really is kind of going deeper into ourselves. It allows us to access whatever shadow material, whatever shadow matter might live in there that we need to, edit or update or heal or whatever needs to happen. And that's unknown. And it's really what's never boring about this work is it's different with everybody. Yes, there are human behaviors and patterns that we present with, but it's always going to be so psycho individual for you. If we were to tap into your energy field and all the way that you carry that, no two people will ever be the same. And that's what makes us, brilliant and, fascinating and wonderful, is that we all have these unique blueprints, and the path to healing is going to be unique to you. And so we want to tend to that. And that's why I love doing the individual work in the way that it really allows us to drop into that in a way that's going to be medicinal for you. And so that's what it looks like, right? Really meeting that energy on a quantum level, right? We meet the energy of who you are or aspects of who you are. And then we're going to manipulate them, right? In a good way. We're going to work with them to make them what we would consciously desire as our ideal self. And that's what we do. And so, that's how we move stuff with people, again, simplistically, but, it can be a lot of work. It can be a long journey. It can be all of those things, but that's kind of what it looks like.
Oh, this is all so interesting. Like, I could geek out on this all day, but I have one final question for you. So a lot of listeners who tune into the show are going through their own detours and life transitions. Could be a divorce, job loss, lost a loved one, and they're just feeling like maybe their identity and their world is blown up. What is one thing that you would like to leave them with today as far as next steps, how to start rebuilding? Where do they go from here?
Before you do anything, I guess my best advice would be the opposite of our impulse or instinct as humans, because we are wired and designed to protect ourselves and to stay safe and to avoid threat. But I would say lean into it. Anything you resist is you're just going to be stuck there. And so if life is falling apart, not that you don't try and put your best efforts, but once you've reached a point where, or a job or whatever that may be, lean into the impossible, lean into the option that you didn't imagine was an option, right? It's like you've said, oh, well, everything else can happen, but not that. And I would say lean into that. Notice where you have resistance to all possibilities. And it's the place where you have resistance that you really need to, dissolve that so that you can, come up with wherever you're meant to go. And I think from there, it's not even just about, because you won't know if there's the resistance that's still there, it's going to be guiding you from a place of fear. And so you're not going to get a clean slate. You're not going to have, the ability to do that in the way that would truly be free and the most expansive and align you, drive you to the highest degree of resonance. And so I would say, notice where the resistance is, and that's where your work is. That is where you need to just sit and sit and sit until you can dissolve it. That is where you need to embrace it and say, okay, I'm going to welcome this in. It doesn't mean that that's the path that I have to take, but my resistance to the path is not going to allow that to happen. And so anyway, that's what I would say as a starting point. And then you can rebuild. Then you'll be confident when you are rebuilding or making decisions that you're making the right decisions and that you're doing them from a solid foundation.
I love that. Great advice. And I always say it too, like lean into the detours. I really think they take us to places of authenticity and alignment. Casey, where can listeners find out more about you, or if they want to work with you, where should they go?
Yeah, so you can find me on socials or my website at Shrink Bigger. You can also Google my name, Casey Stevens, and find me there. And if it resonates, then there's lots of free content that people like, podcasts and things like this that I do, and wonderful people like you who are, broadcasting and sharing all of this. There's lots of free information. But if you're called and, want to see if there's alignment or if I could help you in some way personally, then reach out. Happy to see if it is a vibe.
Awesome. Casey, thank you so much. I am so glad we did this. I really appreciate your honesty, sharing your story, all the nuggets of wisdom that you shared with us today. And I just wish you nothing but the best moving forward.
Oh, you too, Jess. I'm so happy to be here with you. And it's been a privilege. And I would love to connect with you anytime if it would be useful for your audience.
Awesome. Thank you again. Thanks for listening to The Great Detour. If you're enjoying the show, I'd love if you could leave a rating or review wherever you listen to podcasts. It really does help the show have a greater impact. Also, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Have your own detour story? You can share it with me by visiting thegreatdetour.com or The Great Detour on Instagram. Thanks for taking this journey with me.